Margot Robbie on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage, and Me Too. Always thought that once she was a good enough actor, she would write Quentin Tarantino a letter. Just to get on his
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.